In today's video, we're going to talk about importing 3D assets, or more specifically, where to get additional assets. Now, GameGuru Max comes with, I think, over 1,000 different assets or something like that. It's an insane amount of uh, assets. And when I say assets, I'm talking about 3D models. I'm talking about images. I'm talking about uh, sound files. There's just a ton included right out of the gate. Then there's some additional resources that you may not know about, right? So there's a forums, and oftentimes other community members will post some assets there, either free or advertising things that they're trying to sell. There's the Game Creator Store. There is the Discord. There's a channel in the Discord where people will often post either free or paid resources there that they're promoting. Obviously, there's the DLCs. One idea is if you have GameGuru Classic, you can actually go into GameGuru Classic and look through the models there and bring those along. And in fact, if you look at some of these that I have here that have this white background, you pretty much pick them out of a lineup right away when they have that white background, or like see some of these are kind of these older assets. Now, I'm going to warn you to kind of tread carefully here. I kind of went wholesale on this in the beginning and just grabbed them all and threw them in there. But what I found is that it's hit or miss, right? Some of them don't look so great. Some of them don't act so great. So just, be picky. Don't be like me and just be greedy and dump them all in there. So those are already just an enormous amount of places that you can find different assets free or cheap. And then there's third-party sites, right? So then, I mean, gosh, where do I even begin? There's so many. Just Google free 3D game assets, and there'll be all kinds of pages. Now, oftentimes these pages are a mix of free and paid content, and each site is a little different in terms of how you operate it. But what I've done today is I've selected a few models that we can import into Max here in this video, and I'll walk you through how to do it, what to look for, what some of the settings are, and what they mean, and then some of the things that you might experience. And I've tried to select a variety of experiences, but your experience is obviously going to vary from model to model. It's unpredictable. So let's get started. So we have we're going to click the add button here, and then at the bottom there's a button that says import 3D model. So we're going to click on that. It's going to ask you, okay, where are these models found? Well, I've got this enormous cluster of a file system, so bear with me on that. Let's see where I put these in here, there, and I have a few selected right here. So we're going to do the bed first. This is the model itself. There's different formats, right? You might see FBX, you might see GLB, GLTF. All of these are fine. All of them will import. Some don't. So I think that's covered in the documentation if you take a look. And then oftentimes you'll get another folder or another set of files that are all the textures, and we're going to cover those here in a second. But let's go ahead and import this one. I'm just going to select. Oftentimes you'll see the word scene. That's just the standard naming convention for the model. I'm going to click OK. And that brings us to the import area. Now we have a couple problems here. The first thing is scale, right? The model is super small because of the scale. This is here just to kind of give you an idea of scale. And so we're just going to zoom in here. I'm just pressing pressing and holding down the right mouse button, and then pressing the W and S keys to move in and out. So it's kind of the same movement as in the level editor. So here you can see the name of the model just comes right in here. So we're just going to call this bed. I already have a bed, so I'm going to call it bed 2. And then here we have an option under customize for scaling. This takes a little getting used to and a little just trial and error. A lot of times what I'll start with is automatic scaling. So if we do that, then we see that close. It's a little small for this guy, but it's a little closer anyways. We can try each one of these. So let's start with like centimeters. That's going to be way too small. We can start with inches. That's also too small. Look what happens when we do meters. Whoa, it's a giant's bed, right? It's huge. So obviously none of those are going to work. So now what do we do? Well, what we do is go back to the best case scenario, which was this one here. And then we're going to scale this up. Let's try 150. Let's see how that looks. So we can move around here and just kind of look at it from different perspective. But that actually looks pretty good as far as the size. And notice that all of the colors have come in with the bed. They're all applied automatically. This is not the normal situation. This is actually, it has to do, somebody explained it to me once. I don't know if I could repeat it, but basically what it has to do with is the way that the files were named are in line with what the file expects in terms of the slots for the textures, and so it just falls right into place. That, like I said, that's the exception to the rule, and it's why I chose to display this one first, just because it comes very quickly. So we have some other options here. We have offset rotations. Obviously, if the bed comes in sideways, we can change the way it's rotated so that it comes in straight. Same thing with position. Sometimes you'll find them and they're like way over here or way over there, and we just want that to be somewhat centered, just so it shows up nice and neat in the final preview. Sometimes you'll also see them kind of sunk down in the ground, and what you can do is check this box and it'll attempt to level it. So in this case, it's just not necessary, but I think we're going to see that in another model. We have the collision, so we need to tell it what kind of collision should we put on there, and ideally we want we want to pick the least amount of polygons, or we want to try to use up the least amount of resources, right? Because if you have a whole bunch of them that are all using polygons, it's just going to lag down. It's just going to eat up all the resources. In this case, box makes sense. It looks like a box, so it's just going to take that shape, right? So we're going to use that. Static object mode. It says set whether the object is a static, unmoving part of the scene, which in this case, furniture, generally speaking, is going to be. And then we get into the materials. Now, like I said, the materials all just fell into place in this scenario, but we're going to look at a couple others that it doesn't do that and what to do about that. But first, let's start up here at the top, the material type. So we have this drop down, and what it's asking is what kind of material, generally speaking, is this object made of, right? Some objects obviously are made of multiple materials, but in this case, primarily we would probably select wood. And why is that important? So what happens is let's suppose I select metal and I shoot the bed. Then what's going to happen is you're going to get a little spark as if it ricocheted off the metal. If it's wood, then it'll splinter and you'll get a kind of a bullet hole. So it's same thing with stone. And then you've got silent, which is more like, I guess, flesh is what I'm told. I haven't really experimented with that one, but I think that's just everything else, right? Would be silent. But this is important. So make sure for realism and for immersion, we want to make sure that we pick the proper material. We have this selector here is the individual slots that I mentioned earlier, right? Well, again, we're going to get into this in the next model where we're applying each texture, but ultimately what it's saying is that this slot right here corresponds to, like, to the pillow, for example, or the wood, and so on. These are really well named for the most part. Some of these aren't so well named, and it's, like I said, it's kind of hit or miss. I don't know why some of the naming conventions are so weird, but you'll find it a lot. And then we just apply the textures accordingly. But this is pretty much it. I would be happy right now with this. I would probably import this in. This is meant to be sort of a basics video. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty. Like, we'll get into an advanced video at some point in the future, but I think this is good enough for just getting started. There's the animation tool, which in this case doesn't really apply. But if we had a model that was, animated, like let's say a box that opened, or a character or something like that, then you'll use the animation tool. I think I'll cover that in a different video when I do animated entities. I definitely want to do one on importing custom characters, so that's coming as well. And then lastly, it's the path that we're going to import to. You can create your own paths. My experience has been that if you try to do too much in terms of subfolders, it gets a little dicey. I think that's something they're working on, but right now I would just either keep it at user and then one level lower. But let's just go ahead and import this object. And then this comes up, and I think it's just kind of working, because if you wait long enough, what'll happen, see how it's clocking, then it gives you the little preview mode. So you can kind of adjust this any way you need to kind of see the model and kind of know what it is. You can select the different showcase backgrounds. That's just for looks, really. I like to just keep it normal. And then keywords, obviously it's bed, furniture, bedroom. Try to come up with whatever I might search for. And that's it. We're just add this to the library. And we can go ahead and start using it right away. So we can look for, there it is. So I'm just going to drag that in and place it here in the forest. Incidentally, in case you're wondering what this scene is, that was the area that I did the magical items in. It's in there, so I'm just repurposing. All right, so there's our bed. That was a really super simple one. Let's do a little bit harder one next. So we're going to repeat the same process. This time we're going to use the, let's do the retro TV next. So here's the object. This in this case, the extension is OBJ. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, a lot of times it'll come with like the source and the textures, and the source will be zipped. So sometimes you have to just unpack it a little bit. And then we have the textures, which are a little like they're fewer, and their naming convention isn't such that it's going to fall right into place, which is kind of why I chose it. But it still looked good, so I went with it. So let's go ahead and choose it and take a look. All right, so this is what I was talking about. Sometimes you get this problem where not only is it scaled weird, but also it's sunk into the floor. So we're going to have to deal with that. Plus all the colors are missing. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with the name of the file. I always start with the name of the file, because if I don't, I'm going to forget it, and there's going to be scene or something weird, and I might overwrite it. So we'll just do retro TV for now. And then automatic scaling is not really helping us in this case. I think before I deal with the scaling, let's get it situated. So there's the, by clicking find floor, just popped it right up, which is pretty good. But it's a little big for kind of a retro TV. So we're going to deal with that. And I think if I go and try like inches and stuff, it's just going to go crazy. So I'm going to stick with the automatic scaling, but then I'm going to downgrade that to say, let's sorry, 75. No, it's too big. 50. Kind of want to turn it around because the camera's here. Let's turn it around a little bit. So that's going to be rotation. X will work. There we go. Perfect. So it's not too bad. It's still kind of big for a retro TV. I mean, this is really just personal preference, so you do what you think is best. 40 to me looks pretty decent, so I'm going to go with that. Box is obvious for the collision type. Static model is fine. You can change it to a dynamic model, but you want that as an option. And then obviously the wood type, it picked it right, wood for the material. So we're going to start working on the colors, right? So this is something that I had a hard time with because I'm not a 3D modeler. I'm not a professional game designer. I'm a hobbyist, just like most of you watching. And so I had to learn what does all this mean? How do I know what the right thing is? And so we're just going to step through this. We have just one slot to work with. So that's okay. That kind of makes it easy. We're going to apply the albedo first. Now the albedo, basically, long story short, just means color. So if you see diffuse, albedo, or color, sometimes you'll see something else, but like it's pretty, I think once you get used to what to look for, then it's not too hard. Most of the time it's like, base color or something like that. Or if you're not sure, look at the other ones. This one says metallic, this one says normal. Normal's easy to spot, pick out of the lineup, and roughness. So just look at the other ones, compare, and try to figure out, okay, which one is the base color. So we're going to start with that. And that gives us color right away. Now, you might look at that and say, well, that's actually pretty good. I'm happy with that, and stick there. But I would say keep going, right? Because it gets better. So here's the normal map. That, like I said, that one's easy to pick out a lineup. It always looks kind of like this purplish color. We'll click on that. We don't see a ton of difference, but it helped a little bit. And then we have the surface. Now, the surface can be converted to RGBA buttons. So I'm going to check that box, and that gets us our roughness and our metalness and our ambient occlusion. And if you look really closely, this might be really hard to see on the video, but and I didn't spot it even in the editor right away. But if you look really closely, the G here is kind of highlighted, the B is highlighted, and the R is highlighted. So those correspond to the slots that you're looking for. So if we click the G and we look at roughness, that goes right in there. And then I think we do have a metalness, right? Oops. There it goes. And then see, metalness is B, so we click on that. There's our metalness. And then that's applying. Let's give it a second. And then, oops, there it goes. And then R is AO, or ambient occlusion, or just occlusion. That's going to go right there. All right, so that's looking a lot better. Let's see. There's a couple other features here. I'm not going to get too nitty gritty, but I kind of want to go over some of it. Like, for instance, emissive. So emissives are talking about brightness, right? So let's suppose we had an emissive texture that kind of went right over the screen here, and we wanted to have it brighten up as if it was turned on. This TV is by default looks like it's turned off, but if it were turned on, we might want it to glow as if it was turned on. We don't want to use, we could use a light. We could just, click light here and add that and put it next to it when we were setting up the scene, but it wouldn't look quite right. Might be too much, or you'd have to dial it in just right. The emissive allows that screen to glow if you have the emissive textures. A lot of times it doesn't come with one. You could make one, but that's, again, future video stuff. The height, I don't know a lot about this. My understanding of this is think of it like for rocks or things in the ground, right? If you had something that was laying on the ground, then you might want a height map to show the variations, the roughness, the kind of the different features of the rock, if you will. Again, kind of an advanced topic, and most of the time doesn't apply, so I would just skip right over that. This is the emissive color, kind of goes back to the emissive topic. Same thing with like reflectance. It's obviously just how reflective is the object. Render bias. What does this say? I don't even remember. It says set the transparency, render order, distance bias to prioritize rendering of overlapping objects. That's an advanced video topic. We'll skip right past that. Transparent is pretty obvious, right? Is it a transparent object? Is it a fence, right? Is it a piece of glass? Things like that. Double-sided. That's really going to be more for things like a wall. Let's suppose you were bringing in a wall, and you need it to be double-sided so that light doesn't shine through. It takes into account both sides of the object. So wall's a good example for that. Planar reflection, again, isn't going to come up very often, but ultimately what it amounts to is, let's suppose we had a mirror, and in that mirror we had a texture that represented the actual reflective part of the mirror, right? The actual mirror itself. We might want to have that be reflective. Or another example would be a chrome bumper, right? So we might want to apply the planar reflection to that. Obviously, we want the object to cast shadows, so that's checked by default. Again, we don't have any animations for the TV. And we just want to make sure, yeah, we named it. So we're just going to go ahead and input that. I'm just going to import it straight into the user folder. So we've got the TV just stuck up here. So let's get this right. This can take a little doing, I think. Right click, bring it down. Let's bring it out a little bit so we can see it. It's not bad. There we go. And let's see here, we need to give it some keywords. So TV, let's go call it retro TV appliance, whatever else you can think of, and add to library. All right, so that's great. We've got a couple objects in. Let's have a look at that retro TV and see what it looks like. Here's our TV. Let's just drag it into the scene. Why did it put me over there? Okay, let's put it over by the bed. And drag it right over there. All right, so not bad. It's kind of floating up at the top. This has to do with the fact that I didn't really pay that close attention to its floor, like its X. So, you know, just be careful. I'm kind of going quickly because I don't want to waste too much of your time. All right, so there's the TV done. Let's do one more. This model came from the Smithsonian. And the reason I chose it was because I wanted to show you that you're not stuck with just the files that the object comes with. Sometimes the object won't come with a texture, or maybe you just don't like it and you want to try something else out. So this is a really good example. These you can go to the Smithsonian website. And again, I've got a link to the in the description to that site. They've got these 3D scans of these real objects, and they're completely free. They're amazing quality. A lot of times they'll come with textures, like in this case, it came with textures. But in my example, I'm not going to use any of these. I'm just going to use my own. So we're just going to import the Washington model, which comes in sunken down. Let's see here. Let's just do find floor. All right, and a little small, so we might want to bring that up a little bit. I don't know how large the actual statue is, but let's just see what it looks like. Yeah, let's go with that. I'm not really that concerned with it. I'm just showing you. So here we have George Washington in his bathrobe, I guess, with a peace pipe. Oh no, or what is that? Oh, it's a sword. Okay. So let's take a look at materials here. So I downloaded a few textures just kind of give you an idea. And this came with all these different, like the different normal maps and stuff like that. So let's suppose we wanted George Washington to be made out of marble. So we can start with that. Let's do a nice kind of a whiter marble. Here's that color, so we can see that. I'll just go all the way through here and quickly pick these out. So let's see here. There's the let's see, marble. Here we are. That's roughness. So that's what it would look like if we went marble. Kind of looks all right. You could experiment around. We could even make him, wood. So let's try wood. Let's see what he looks like. You're going to want to change all the files to make sure that it matches what you're trying to go for. Let's see here. Roughness. I guess we don't have the metalness or anything. Okay, so that brightened it up quite a bit. So there's George Washington as a wood model instead. So play around with it. There's a lot of customization. That means basically what that means is if you think about what that does for you as far as potential, right? Let's suppose you have a wall. Now you can just import the wall, apply a texture. Now you've got a plaster wall. Now you've got a brick wall. Now you've got a marble wall. Sky's the limit. But that's the video. That's everything I wanted to show you guys in this one. If you have questions or if you have any insights to the things that I was a little fuzzy on, I'm happy to learn from you as well. Be sure to leave a comment down below and tell me where I'm wrong. I'm happy to learn from you. It's fine. If you like the video, if you learned something new, be sure to click the like button. And if you're new here, or if you want to see more content like this, be sure to click subscribe. It helps grow the channel and get the word out to other users. But that's it. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.